Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm Neti Leibovich. I'm a product owner's team leader located in Israel. And today, we will be talking about how can Zerto go public and back. This session will have two parts. One part will be, the first one will be with me talking about Azure platform. Then I will move it to Tamir Solomon, also product owner's team member, to talk about what's coming next with AWS. No spoilers. Okay, so before we start, in the next couple of slides, I would like to share with you some statements that I would like to, in a raise of hand, that you share whether you agree with these statements or not. Let's start. I believe that my organization will eventually run some of the mission-critical applications in the public cloud. Okay. Look around you. It seems like we're in favor. We're running mission-critical applications in the public cloud today. Okay, good. And the last one would be, which one is it going to be? Is it Azure or Amazon Web Services? Is it Azure or AWS? Both? Okay. So I've been to Zerto over 6 years now, and I've seen the company grows and providing more solutions to additional use cases to our customer base that we're expanding over these years. And one thing remained persistent throughout all these years, and that would be the vision. A world of uninterrupted technology for business and people. And as such, company with this vision, we already identified the need for support for the public cloud a couple of years ago, when we first introduced our support in AWS as a platform for the DR use case. Now, why would you use the public cloud as a DR site? So there are many reasons, and some of you probably can think about it yourselves. But let's go over some. For example, it's global. You have regions all around the world with Amazon and Azure, and it's really within a reach to spin up a DR site with no problems. It's easy. It's accessible from everywhere. You don't need a real expertise in actually make it feasible for you and approachable. You don't need to wait for hardware to arrive and the IT guys to put in a cage and racks in it and storage and servers and to spin up what's required in order to make what you need available for you in order to operate as a DR site. The elasticity part is also important because at times you expand and you create more branches all over the world, and you need to protect more workload in your existing data centers, on-prem data centers, and you can easily spin up these DR sites wherever you want and expand and shrink and don't need to have hardware laying there with no use and waste money. Now, if talking about expenses, then it depends on which workload you decide to replicate to these kind of DR sites, but it's of your choice. And with Zerto, you have this ability to select to which kind of a DR site you replicate to. So no maintenance, of course. You don't need to worry about that. They're taking care of it. Azure, Amazon, no end-of-life products that you need to dispose. So what's coming now in our release in the summer with Azure? So in 5.0, we introduced our support in Azure as a DR platform. And now, in the upcoming release, we are completing this DR story by providing you a way to automatically fail back to your on-prem hypervisor-based data centers. So let's remind ourselves how it looks like. So on the on-prem side, here on the left, you have the workload you're trying to protect. You have the ZVM and the VRAs. Most of you know what these components are. ZVM is the management component. The VRA is the replication engine that allows you to reach these RPOs of seconds that we are providing, which is a differentiator for other products that provide solutions for DR. So also when talking about Azure as a DR site, these are the RPOs we're talking about, RPOs of seconds. And on the DR site, you have one appliance, which we call the Zerto Cloud Appliance, ZCA, which is located within a region and owned by a specific subscription, and it has two Windows services running in it, the ZVM and the VRA. All in one appliance that is available on Azure Marketplace, and please, when you deploy these VMs, use the image on Azure Marketplace. So you deploy the VM, you log into it, you do some kind of authentication, and you close the wizard, and there you go. We create for you automatically the Zerto standard storage account on which all the recovery disks and all the journal that is required for you to be able to recover to any point in time will reside on, all in one location. And all the workflows, those that go with us way back and have already VMware solution deployed, know that in order to provide low RTOs of minutes, as we do with any other platform we support, and you will hear about what we're having coming soon with AWS, we also allow you to pre-configure all that is required for you, that once you recover to Azure, all the VMs recovered will be already set on the right subnet and the right VNet and with the right security groups, and you can pre-select the instance site that it will come up with on the DR site. So, and of course, VIP is also supported when replicating to Azure. And all the VHDs that eventually be attached to the VMs, yeah? Yeah, we'll get to it, but the answer is yes, okay? So you have the VMs recovered in Azure, and all the VHDs will also remain on the same standard storage account that we created for you. And what's coming up in our next release in the summer will be for you to be able to automatically fail back to your on-prem site. Now remember, it will be the same experience you have with any other platforms that you're using with Zerto. So we know that the workflows are easy and are intuitive, and we keep cloning them between all platforms we support throughout the releases. Okay, so once you're recovered, now you're able to fail back to your on-prem side using the move operation, and you're done. And when you go the other direction from Azure to VMware, you keep the RTO of minutes that you're used to, because it's hypervisor-based data center, and this is what we do there. It's easy to recover to. So let's cover some use cases that we're going to support. Of course, the BCDR use case, which I already mentioned, it's global. We talked about it. I mentioned it. You can, if you have several branches, you're expanding your workload, you can easily deploy these DR sites in Azure and protect more of your workload on-prem to Azure data centers, to ZCA managed site. Other workflows that you're familiar with, failover, fail back to on-premise with automatically enabling reverse replication, it works and it's supported. Cloning, testing, file level recovery. And other use case we're going to support is, of course, if you need to meet some compliance requirements and need to have several copies of your on-prem data center with sensitive and critical applications data, you can do that with one-to-many. And this already supported from 5.0. You can also set up virtual protection groups with different SLAs to protect the same workload on-prem, and define for each virtual protection group, for each DR site it's targeted to, different history. It can be 30 days journal that you will maintain. If you want, it will be to Azure. And if you need only 24 hours in 1 week, you can also have it to your hypervisor-based DR data center that you own. And of course, managed service providers can also give you the same solutions with us. The migration use cases to Azure are supported. You can you can recover, you can migrate your entire data center or some of the workload on-prem to Azure. You can decide that you want to shut down your existing DR site and to migrate it to Azure for cost reasons, and several decisions. And this use case was already validated with some of our customers this week. So let's recall what we've said so far. We're gaining RPOs of seconds, RTOs of minutes when replicating and recovering to Azure. You can have 30 days journal, and you have no additional costs until you push that red button and say, OK, I need to fail over for compute resources. So one-to-many is supported. File-level recovery is as well. So what about replicating out of Azure, going the opposite direction? So you can, the main and primary use case for our upcoming release is to be able to protect workload in Azure for failback purposes. But technically, you can protect workload in Azure, but it is very much limited, and we will cover some of this stuff. And you need to meet these criteria in the 2 bullets at the bottom. The VMs that you're trying to protect should be in the same region and owned by the same subscription as the ZCA. And all the disks that are attached to the VMs that you're trying to protect, all of them, have to reside on that Zerto storage account. Okay? Now, there are workarounds to use different storage accounts, but it will require some manual work for the upcoming release, and we will make it more accessible and user-friendly in the future. God bless you. Migration use cases from Azure are also supported. You can use Move to move your workload on Azure to your on-prem data center. And cloud service providers can provide better services to you guys and other customers, their own clients, existing clients, with Azure as another DR side they can enable for you to use. They can onboard customers easily and fast because deploying that data center in Azure is really easy and simple. They can go global. They can define that they can support DR services remotely for their customers that are spread all around the world. So if you have several branches and you're using managed service providers for your DR use cases, you can utilize them in each and every branch you have. And of course, with the elasticity capabilities of the public cloud, you can also burst into the cloud. They can burst into the cloud for you and make sure that they always have available resources for you for the data that you need to recover. And if you have strict compliance requirements as enterprises and healthcare and all the industries that require that, then it's easy with Azure, and they can provide you that as well. We want to hear more about these use cases, so we'll be happy if you share that with us throughout this day. So what to expect when DRing to Azure? RPOs of seconds, RTOs of minutes, ZCA and Zerto storage account coupling, one Zerto storage account per ZCA. And you need to use Move in order to fail back to on-prem. And don't forget to test first. So what's coming up next? Post our summer release. These are the items that we are considering, and we need your feedback on that. Azure to Azure between region replication. Supporting multiple storage accounts when replicating to Azure, that you will be able to select which storage account you replicate to on a VPG level, on a VM level. And to be able to protect workload in Azure that resides on different storage accounts. And of course, the premium storage account support. So your top 3 takeaways from this presentation should be the failback from Azure to your on-prem site is the main use case, the primary use case for the upcoming release. And you can protect workload in Azure, but you need to mind the limitations. And there are more than what I just mentioned, and I will be more happy to discuss. And this is yet another ZVR release that supports the vision that I introduced to you a couple of minutes ago, not for the first time. So I'll move it to Tamir, and then we will have time for questions, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Etty. Hi, everybody. So I'm Tamir Solomon. I've been with the company for about 4 years, and I'm in the product team now. I used to be an SE in Europe. And what I want to discuss today is about what we've done in AWS on the platform. I'm running the AWS with the engineering team. What we've done in this platform in the upcoming release, in the summer release. And before I do that, I want to cover what we have today. And that's what you guys pretty much know. We have supported the AWS platform as a recovery, as a target site since version 4, which was released about 4 years ago, I believe. And as part of our implementation, we do see significantly higher RTOs in this platform than what we have in our usual hypervisor or Azure platforms. Okay, it can go up to an hour and usually much more than an hour. And the way we architectured the solution is basically all the data is replicated into S3 as objects, and only upon recovery, this is where we actually take the data, read the S3 object, and rehydrate the data into EBS as recovery disks and create the EC2 instances. Okay, that's the way we operate. So everything is saved into S3, and only upon failover test or remove, we create the instances and read the data from S3 and write it into EBS. The way we do it is based on official AWS supported APIs. Okay? We basically have two official APIs that we're using. They're called AWS import or import instance and import volume. Okay? Since then, AWS introduced another way of importing into AWS, which is import image. We're using the import instance and import volume. And we basically take the the OS disk, the boot disk, and use import instance on it. And then all of the rest of the volumes of the protected VM will be imported using import volume. Okay? The section where we use import instance also install drivers on the protected VM in order for them to actually be able to run on the AWS platforms, the required drivers to run that virtualization platform. Zen drivers, etc. Okay? Now, most of the limitations that you see in the Zerto product in terms of what can and cannot be protected when recovering to AWS is limited by the fact or by the APIs that we're using. Okay? For example, the 1 terabyte maximum volume size is a limitation of import instance and import volume. The magnetic disks that are being created is a limitation by these APIs. Okay? So this is what we had. We figured we need to do something better. And as we like to do in Zerto, we do it our own way. So we developed a proprietary mechanism to actually do it better. Okay, so we figured out import instance and import volume are not working as fast as they could. And actually doing it our own, reading the data and writing it to EBS, we can do it better. And we have done it, okay? And what we've seen, and I'll explain a little bit about the mechanism in a second, but what we've seen is we can go up to 9 times faster in terms of recovery times. So basically, it introduces a significant improvement into AWS, making it much more DR-like, where you want to recover as fast as possible and provide a recovery site or an operating environment and application to your customers. Okay? And while we're doing this, while we develop this mechanism, some, if not all of the limitations are not relevant anymore. There are new limitations, but the old, bound by the AWS APIs, limitations do not longer exist and are not longer relevant. Okay? So how do we do it? It's a very simple concept. For every protected volume, we create a temporary instance that is responsible for reading and writing the data into EBS. Reading from S3, writing to EBS. Okay? So we basically conceptually scale out the way we do the import. We create, let's say you're protecting 100 VMs, each with 2 disks. 200 temporary instances will be created in your environment, reading as fast as possible, writing as fast as possible based on the instance size. And by that, it's a scale-out architecture. Okay? Obviously, you're on a platform that allows you to scale out and create as many instances as you want. So the way we do it is basically leveraging the AWS elasticity or scale and doing it in parallel, creating those recovery volumes in EBS. Once all the data has been read from S3 and written to EBS, we then take the disk and attach it to a recovered instance. Okay? So that's the concept. And if you want to, just as an example, we took a Windows 2012 server with 50 OS disks and 250 gig of data volume. And if it took in the old method, the AWS APIs, the import instance, import volume, it took 2 hours and 50, we've been able to take it down to 25 minutes. Okay? I think it's pretty significant. Now, we're not replacing it completely. We do allow you to consider what you want to use. It obviously introduces additional cost, and it might introduce additional setup, and I'll explain in a second. So you do have an option. When you are failing over, or when you're creating a VPG, you can select, how do I want to recover into AWS? Do I want to use the old method, which is AWS import? And there's probably not, I can't think of a good reason to do it. Or you can have one of the two options on the top. The first one is a default. And basically what it means is, I don't want to do the work required to install the drivers. I still want to leverage the fact that import instance actually installs the drivers for me. And therefore, I want to use the import instance to recover that VM, or the API, the import instance, to recover that VM into AWS. However, I do have 1 to 16 terabytes volumes, data, that I want to recover into AWS, and I want to use the new import mechanism to actually take that data. So it will significantly, or it will be faster if you have data volumes or large data volumes. If you have a single volume, it won't be relevant. Okay? But it will still use the import instance, so you don't need to actually do anything on the protected VM. Okay? The second option is the fastest that we can get into AWS. However, it does required from you to actually install those drivers that need to be installed on a VM in order for it to actually run on the AWS platform. Okay, so it's up to you. If you want to go through installing drivers on the protected VM, you have full control over it, you have access to the images that are created, you can go ahead and install it, great. If not, you can use the first method. Now we do have, it's mainly for Windows. We have seen a single Linux instance as well, or Red Hat, that requires drivers as well. So the drivers are mainly required for Windows operating system. And we have obviously provided you with a link and documentation to get it. Okay? So what to expect when we are DRing using the new methods? Is there an additional cost impact? Yes, there is. We are creating temporary instances. The default is M4 extra large or M3 extra large, depending on the region. And the fact that it exists for a temporary time does cost money. So I took an assumption of, just as an example again, a 50 gig disk with 500 gig data volume and writing around 100 megabytes per second. To just calculate how much time it will take, it will be about 25 cents per failover. Because that instance will run for about, I don't remember what was the time, but that's how we calculate it. So very small, if you're running a temporary failover or failover test, but if you do a failover for an entire site, it might cost, $10 or whatever. Do I need to install drivers on the protected VM? Yes, if you choose the method that does the OS disk with our new import mechanism, yes, you do need to install. If it's Windows, and we will have very good documentation on when do you need to install. So it's something you need to go and do on the protected VM if you want. How can I get these drivers? The Zen project offers, we didn't want to actually, we wanted you to see where we're getting the drivers from, so we wanted you to go and consider yourself if these drivers are relevant and you're willing to install them in your environment or not. Now you might want to now think, okay, this is an M3, M4 extra large. What if I want to do an R3 with 8 CPUs? Does it improve performance, et cetera? It actually does, but currently we're not allowing you to actually select the recovered instance size. It will be something that we're considering next. Okay? And same goes for what is the disk type that will be created. So we're no longer handling EBS magnetic. We're creating the IO1 or GP2. By default, it is the GP2. And again, this is not configurable at the moment, but we want to allow, hopefully we'll get to it in the next version, after it to actually allow you to configure it. And then again, increase the performance if you have specific instances that you know will require heavy IOs on the disks. And now the last question is also interesting. The temporary instances are actually based on a public Linux AMI by Amazon, and we actually put a script on them that actually does all the magic. And they are created with a public API in order for them to actually access the S3 and read the data and get the script, not read the data. So the fact that this is done, in order for it to access the internet, we do require a public IP, or it does require a public IP. And we were wondering whether it will pose a security concern. Probably not, but in any way, we are creating, as part of the process, we are creating a temporary security group that allows only outbound connectivity and assign it to the specific instance, to all the temporary instances that are created. So it shouldn't be a concern, something you need to look at, and don't be surprised. So I did write it down. In terms of the things we are considering next, I kind of mentioned it, determining the instance size, the ability to configure the EBS disk type that will be created, multi-availability zone support. So the way that it works today, because it requires access to the internet, we rely on the fact that the ZCA itself has internet access. So whatever subnet and VPC and security group are configured for the ZCA will be configured to these temporary instances as well, because we know we have internet access from it. We're currently not allowing you to start selecting what happens in other availability zones in that region, because we don't know if it will have internet connectivity or not. It's something we need to consider for the next release, if we want multi-availability zone support, or will you have additional ZCA in each availability zone. So that's the concept of what we've done in terms of AWS performance improvements. It is, again, what we observed in our QA cycles. It is significant improvement. And if you want to see more or talk more about this, by all means, come visit our booth. And just as a teaser, we do have plans to do the failback from AWS as well. I think it was kind of mentioned. This is something we are exploring on how we can do it, given what AWS are exposing on one hand, And this is currently in discussions. So with that, I'm done with the AWS section, and let's open the stage for questions both on the Azure section and AWS. If you won't participate, I'll ask. Go ahead.
So if you have a workload running in Azure and you have it in the VPG and it's being brought back to something on-premise, can that VPG still have either off-site backup or on-site backup capability where?
So when going out of Azure, is it on?
Can you turn on the microphone?
Hello? You hear me? So when getting out of Azure, you don't have the offsite backup capability. You won't see it in the UI as a tab there in the workflow, in the wizard there. When getting to Azure, you will be able to do that. Okay? It's one directional. So I will say that it's not entirely symmetrical, all the features that you're aware of and you know. We support most of our feature set when replicating to Azure, as you're familiar with our rich feature set that we have in VMware, but it's not the other way around, okay? And offsite backup is an example of that.
So if you're doing the offsite backup in the Azure setup, where is that kept in Azure?
So you need to define, if you remember, you create a repository in the ZVM, and you can direct it locally to a local drive that is mapped to the ZVM machine, and it's aware of. And basically, if you're asking if it's to a standard storage account or anything that is Azure related, then we're not there yet. But let's talk about it. I want to hear the use case, what you're trying to back up there. Okay?
Once the machines are running in Azure, is there any performance impact as they're writing to the virtual storage account from an IOPS perspective?
So the storage accounts are limited. If you know, so if you remember, I said that we support only standard storage account. And the standard storage account is limited in terms of IOPS to a maximum of 20,000 IOPS, okay? And in that manner, when you ask about replicating to or out, because this is the same from Azure, from us, no performance impact. It's only limited to what the storage account allows you to actually write, okay?
For your Z importer looking forward, then you're looking at allowing the end user to choose the size. Would that be environmental holistically? Would that be, I could, for VPG, find a larger instance to get this VPG up quicker? But for this one, not particularly?
So at the moment, it is a site level, but the future thoughts are to actually do it on a per VPG, per VM possibly, because some VMs will require, or some VMs are more important than others. Not all VMs are created equal. So yeah, we will hopefully get to allow you to configure that per VPG. Anything? Yeah.
What's the next release when the Azure becomes a topic? Do you support one-to-many?
So actually, yes, this is one that goes both directions. It will be supported when, it's already supported when going to Azure, and the other way around, it will be supported as well. But what's the use case? What are you trying to do?
Because we'll be trying to moving some of our applications onto Azure only. So we're hoping that we use Zerto to boost for replication across different regions. So
You want, come again? I'm sorry?
So we're going to host applications for our clients on the East Coast, right? We want to be outside on different regions.
Okay.
And then we can leverage Zerto to do that.
Okay, yes, you can. Okay.
We had one more there.
Question for Tamir. Will the Z importer respect the limits that are currently placed for a subscription? So if I can only have 20 M4X larges, will it draw
That's a great question that I forgot to mention. Indeed, you have currently AWS limitations on how many instances from a certain type can run in parallel. So the defaults are actually 20 for M4 extra large and 20 for M3, and I think it's pretty much 20 for all of them, and we do respect it. And what we'll do in that case is instead of, obviously, it means only 20 volumes. It's very, so on one hand, we advise and we advise you to actually contact AWS support and ask them to raise that number. On the other hand, we're not going to fail your failover. Okay, so what we'll do is actually wait for another instance to be created and wait for another instance to be created. It will extend the RTO significantly, depending on how many volumes we need to wait for. But yeah, it won't crush the system. Any other questions? Going once. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And visit our booth, please.